This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
Today's Two Bad Hombres podcast is brought to you by The Athletic. Premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Two Bad Hombres listeners can get 20% off the first year of an annual subscription by visiting theathletic.com/DSP.
I was trying to get it out here. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get flat. I got 6 jobs. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. Get it, get flat.
And we're still not tired here on Two Bad Hombres, the first 2018 edition of the podcast. I am your host, Vito Turco, alongside my broadcast partner in fun. And I like to say my sidekick, the Doc from Doc and Jack, John Charles Macaroon. John, Happy New Year to you and your family, and how are you doing?
Happy New Year, Vito. Welcome to the weekend. Always enjoy podcasting. 2017 was awesome for the network. Vito, I know you called into WDFN, but could you imagine in your wildest dreams that Adam and I would co-host a live sports talk radio program across Metro Detroit at WDFN? It was surreal. Vito, it was surreal being in front of a live microphone and talking to the people of Detroit. We got phone calls. We got fun text. You called in.
Being a little bit sarcastic.
It was a watershed moment for the network. It was awesome to do. And just sitting in that chair, I was comfortable because I just told myself, look, it's the first time you're hosting a live radio show. Just talk to Adam. My role was to be the number 2, just kind of help Adam along with the topics. Adam was the host. He drove the show. He took the calls. He ran the ship, and he did a great job. We got a chance to get a copy, a version of it. It was awesome. I've listened back to it now only once. So far. And it was just, it exceeded my expectations because it was fun. I didn't have to do all the heavy lifting. I got to help Adam along. I provided good, decent points. And I brought up points that were relevant to topics at hand, kind of previewing that you have to be concerned regarding Jim Harbaugh and his coaching. You got to be concerned regarding Michigan. I poked holes at Adam's points regarding his thoughts that Michigan was going to win the game. I brought up that Jim Harbaugh has to do a much better job coaching. He's too conservative in that front. And so I brought up relevant points. I brought up relevant points regarding Michigan, Avery Bradley, the Detroit Lions. And so you just kind of felt like, you know what? The 400 hours or so I've done podcasting was worth it because I made limited mistakes. I was able to just free flow it and have a good time. And really, it went by fast. 3 to 6 last Friday. If you didn't get a chance to catch it, it was awesome. We were on WDFN. Check out our Instagram or go back to our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. But it gave me and Adam a sense of confidence being there. It was a great way to end the year, Friday, December 30th. How was your New Year, sir?
Mine was stellar because I didn't spend it with you. No. But really quick, too, about you and Adam, it just stunk having to listen to you. Now, Adam was terrific. And I love how you were stroking your own ego that whole entire time, talking about being on the air on 11:30 a.m. WDFN, just bragging about yourself and how well you did. You said limited mistakes you had. I'm proud of you, but I can tell you're really proud of yourself, as you typically are when you do well. And you and Adam, seriously, though, I mean, you sounded like you've been used to doing this thing. And I guess, well, you have been. Like you said, all the reps. I mean, think about how many reps you probably have. Now, you don't even know the total amount, but it's in the hundreds, and almost 1,000, maybe 1,000 reps that you and Adam have had in totality.
Exactly.
Right? At least you, because you've done so many different podcasts, doing episodes with Jason, with me. It's crazy.
It was amazing because the way it went down was he got the nod. It was a day where he was filling in for Big Drew and Jim on WDFN 3 to 6. He gave me the nod and said, "Hey, can you come up here?" I said, "Yes, no doubt about it." I dropped everything I was doing. It was a Friday of my vacation, last Friday, and I went down there. We had a good time. It was pretty easy because there were some big topics regarding the Lions, playing a meaningless game, the last game of the year, Jim Caldwell's future. You had the bowl game previews. You had the night before, Michigan State dominating in the Holiday Bowl. So it was just fun, and it was basically, we had a lot of stuff to talk about. And so it was simple. First hour Lions, second hour college football, third hour Pistons and Avery Bradley, and we were able to just roll with it. And because of the fact that we both grew up listening to WDFN with Greg Henson and the crew, Stoney and Wojo, it was awesome to be sitting in that chair. And I just told myself, I'm just talking to my buddy Adam, and we're going to have a good old time with it. And we didn't burn the place down. The producer said, wow, for the first time, you guys sounded pretty fun. And we had a good old time with it. Great marketing for the podcast. And again, it just goes to show you that with hard work, it does get rewarded. And we were able to deliver. It was fun. It was something that, of course, when you do it for the first time, you want to do it again. And I was thinking about it all weekend. I'm like, man, I want to get back on the air. But at the same time, I look forward to being in my house. And my house is this podcast network. You see what others are trying to do in terms of building their networks and stuff like that. It's cool, but our house is clean. Our house is where I'm comfortable. And so podcasting with you, podcasting with Adam, Jason, it's just a great experience. And so, you know, if I'm going to pass along a lesson to others, you got to be podcasting. I mean, if you're not on the air in Detroit, there's only a limited number of hosts that can get on the ticket. There's only one sports station in town. You need to stick your face in front of a microphone, do podcasting. You literally could do it every single day. I take the advice strongly of Perry Farrell. He's a kind man, and he gave us advice. He said, look, do videos, write, podcast. It's out there for you. If you want to make it, I mean, friend of the podcast, Brandon Justice, started his own thing. That's what's awesome about podcasting and doing your own thing, is that you have the unlimited capabilities of doing your own thing. And if it's good, it'll be noticed. And you're semi-decent, so you've been noticed.
Semi-decent, which... yeah, that means I'm being noticed a little bit more, I guess. I'll take the semi-decent. Thank you for that compliment. I know that was a huge complimentary gesture towards me, Doc.
I seen you were partying heavily in Grand Rapids over New Year's, huh?
I was, and no alcohol, obviously, that I consume, because I don't consume alcohol, okay? Had a good time with my buddy Brett, and I really did consume a few drinks of alcohol. And Brett, his buddy's from Central Michigan. Brett went to Central Michigan, studied undergrad at CMU in Mount Pleasant. He lived it up with those buddies. They lived together. They roomed together on campus at CMU, off campus in some kind of, I don't know what it was, apartment, house. I think it was an apartment. And I had like 4 or 5 guys living at one point amongst each other. So, and they made it happen. We had a good time. We went to the Bob, and this is like the 6-story complex where there was a lot of partying, a lot of good-looking women and men, and had a grand old time. First time being there, second time being in Grand Rapids, I believe. Grand Rapids, a great area, a nice area to have fun, a safe area, and it was snowing, coming down hardcore, but still made the best of it, walked through the snow, froze our behinds off, but we were fine by the end of the night, and we took an Uber home, so safe and sound. We got back to our hotel, a lovely Holiday Inn, and stayed the night inside of that. The one room we had, a bunch of dudes there sleeping in the same room, but we made it happen. And once again, we're safe and sound. Woke up the next morning on New Year's Day and then drove home from Grand Rapids. And once again, I give Grand Rapids 2 thumbs up. I really love being there when I have been there in Grand Rapids, Doc.
Vito, it was a great New Year's Day for me. Got a chance to wake up, hang out with the kids, have a great breakfast, and then tune into the Michigan game. My goodness, it went true to form, man. It was boring as all hell. Michigan's offense was terrible. It was atrocious, and I kind of got a chance to poke a little bit at Angelique Shengelis in that the day before, I think during some preparation stuff, Michigan was playing football on the beach, and it wasn't authentic because they had Michigan cameras there. They had a boom mic, so I tweeted her, and I said, ooh, a real authentic video with a boom mic. And you look at Michigan, and after you watch that performance, the choke job of the Michigan Wolverines, a lot of people, a lot of Michigan supporters are really upset regarding what they saw on the football field. That did not look like Michigan football in terms of Brandon Peters making mistakes, Michigan choking, turning the ball over. A highly rated athlete that was recruited, Donovan Peoples-Jones, made some mistakes in muffing the football, and then he failed to make a key play in the next drive. You look at it and you go, what did Jim Harbaugh do over the last 30 days? Because when you watched Michigan State at the Holiday Bowl, they came out there to destroy Washington State. And so watching that football game, I was laughing, having a good old time. And then, though, to be honest, when you watch the real MVPs, when you watch the college football playoff, you're like, oh, man, Michigan State, Michigan, they're not in that class.
For sure, because, Michigan.
Man,
right?
The Rose Bowl, you know what, for me? The Rose Bowl cleansed all the nonsense from watching Michigan and Michigan State this year. 2 teams running the football. It even cleansed my anger watching the Lions. They couldn't run the football all year. You watch the Rose Bowl, and these guys were gashing the ball running. The offenses were entertaining. They were gaining a lot of yards. And you look at that and you go, that's what Michigan's aspiring to? They're nowhere close. If I was a Michigan supporter, I don't think just having Shea Patterson in the wings is enough. You got to retool that offensive line. Jim Harbaugh's got to get out of his funk. There's a lot of issues going on with that Michigan team, And I'm fascinated being a Michigan State supporter going, seriously? You guys could have 5 losses next year.
Well, you know what? They have a tough schedule. I mean, the first game of the year is at Notre Dame in primetime. I mean, good luck winning against Notre Dame, a team that had a good season at one. It's a bowl game this year. On top of U of M losing, you had Ohio State win its bowl game, MSU win its bowl game, Notre Dame win its bowl game, and Michigan looked so dismal offensively. All the turnovers committed by U of M. And this highly rated quarterback, Brandon Peters, all the hype that he had coming into this season, threw 0 touchdowns, 2 INTs in the game. Michigan's quarterbacks, great QBs, accounted for 9 total passing TDs in 2017. How dismal is that from a Jim Harbaugh-led coached offense? It is sad but true about the state of U of M going into 2018, and it is a put-up-or-shut-up campaign for Jim Harbaugh in Ann Arbor. And I think he has 2 seasons to really get the ship righted and to prove himself as head man at U of M.
What were you thinking when Michigan had to lead 19-3? Were you feeling comfortable? Were you high on the hog? Were you like, okay, good, we got a situation where the Michigan football team can actually get to their 9th victory? Michigan could have helped the Big Ten go undefeated the entire 2017 bowl campaign. Were you happy at 19-3?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was thinking, yeah, they're going to go 8-0. Yeah, you're right. And then to have U of M be the team that loses, how much, I mean, you said it yourself as an MSU fan, you were laughing. How about D'Antonio, Urban Meyer, all these coaches laughing in the face of U of M because U of M had all the hype machine, overhyped all year long, and then to end the season, losing to South Carolina, going 8-5 and being the lone Big Ten team to lose a bowl game this season. It was sad. It was embarrassing. Once again, Jim Harbaugh has another 2 seasons, in my opinion, to right the ship, and he better do so in a big manner, and I'm going to say that he better win 10 games at least next season before the bowl game that they play in.
Unbelievable in terms of Michigan's inability to close that game out. I thought that they were in control, but then all of a sudden, Michigan started making mistakes. It's like they didn't know how to handle success. A Jim Harbaugh team looking like that has really upset the fan base. Many people are sitting here today going, whoa. They're alarmed, they're concerned, but you know, in terms of trying to be objective, for me, I just sit and laugh, and a lot of State fans are going, dude, give Jim Harbaugh that lifetime contract. We're going to own Michigan forever. But for you, being objective, do you think Jim Harbaugh, if he makes some changes to the staff offensively, if he kind of gets out of the funk with the addition of Shea Patterson, the involvement of the young talent, do you think that Michigan is closer than what the fans think? Because fans are upset when they see that 5 in the L column. 8-5 season, year 3, Jim Harbaugh. You can't get paid $9 million for that.
And the team didn't deserve to have high caliber expectations to be able to contend for a college football playoff spot. They weren't one of the best 4, weren't going to be one of the best 4, 10, or 25 teams this season in all of college football. But still, they underachieved because they should have been 10-3 this season, counting the bowl game that they should have won. They should have won the bowl game, should have beaten your Spartans, too, at the Big House. And now they have to play in Spartyville next season, at Ohio State as well, at Notre Dame. 3 tough games right there, right off the bat. And then you have the rest of the schedule. So imagine U of M and Harbaugh going 8-5 yet again next season. How bad that would look for Jimmy. And he would get a 5th year. I think he has 5 guaranteed years. And I tweeted this out from my lovely Twitter account, at Vito Jerome on Twitter. And Steve Deese from the Michigan podcast here on our airwaves even agreed with me. So I was very glad about that a guy that knows this stuff agreed with me that Harbaugh has 5 guaranteed years. But next year is still a vital year. If he goes 8-5, it makes his job that much less safe going into his 5th year at U of M, Doc. Big time, in my opinion.
Now, very soon, we're going to get Aaron McMann on the phone lines here to kind of recap the Michigan season, look ahead to the future, look ahead to Shea Patterson, and talk about Jim Harbaugh. But in your mind, where are you at with it? Are you of the mindset of, look, I'm still hopeful years 4 and 5 can be successful, that Michigan is not that far away from being successful? Or are you like some of the other fans that have kind of, started to get really upset and frustrated with the fact that this is not what we signed up for?
Well, it's hard to be optimistic when you look at the fact, I brought it up already, 9 total touchdowns accumulated by U of M quarterbacks in 2017.
9.
From a Jim Harbaugh coach team. How sad and shocking. It is shocking to reveal that to the masses here over these airwaves, Doc, but it is true. It's a fact. Facts are facts, and you have to bring that up, and that's something you can use against Harbaugh in this team this season, and Harbaugh going into his 4th year on the job in Ann Arbor.
Are you mad, or are you hopeful?
More hopeful than others. I think the 50 and over demographic is extremely upset and not willing to give Harbaugh even a 4th year. Like my dad would fire him right now if he had the chance to. I don't think he realizes that this is a process. It's not going to be built overnight. But then at a certain point, too, you have to bring up 3 years into the job, this guy was a quarterback whisperer. Where's the quarterback that's been developed? And now you're relying upon Shea Patterson. Might be a great quarterback, Johnny Manziel type QB that can be a dual threat, but is he even eligible? He's got to be eligible, first and foremost, to start next year for the Wolverines, too.
Rose Bowl, Vito, the Georgia quarterback, was that a freshman?
I know your point is that even young guys have succeeded. So these guys that now have been coached up by Harbaugh, maybe are a little bit more experienced, where are they? They're not turning out to be
Wait a minute, in the Rose Bowl,
fruitful or studs.
Did Oklahoma or Georgia turn around and hand the ball off to a tight end? I was literally shocked in that he actually pulled off some of the things that I said on the radio at WDFN. I said that Jim Harbaugh as a coach has to do a lot better job because on the air, I called him just a marketer. I said his coaching has gone way down.
His coaching is like secondary, right? It seems like it at this point.
And I said on the air, I said, it looks like that he's got to turn it around and actually rededicate himself to be the coach that he was 5 years ago because I think knowing that he has all this power, it's gotten to his head or he's not doing the same things that he did that led to success in years past. I do believe that he needs to be a much better coach. So I'm curious to see what Aaron McMann has to say, and we're going to dial him up right now.
Aaron McMann now with me on Two Bad Hombres to provide some fresh feedback. And Aaron, Happy New Year to you and yours, and how are you doing?
I'm good. Happy New Year to everyone listening. It's good to be back.
Well, thank you for being back, and I know you love being in Michigan, this lovely weather that you have to experience after being in lovely Tampa, Florida, at the Outback Bowl, where you saw a lovely contest. I keep throwing around that adjective, but what a great contest you got to witness in the Outback Bowl, featuring U of M, who you have covered all season long, and then South Carolina. And 2 8-4 squads going into the game. Wasn't probably going to be a great, highly entertaining ball game, but man, I didn't even need a sleeping pill to fall asleep watching that game. I mean, that was my sleeping pill, watching that ball game.
Yeah, it was really a tale of two halves. The first half I thought was relatively boring. I remember seeing someone at halftime that I was having trouble literally, staying awake for it. It was all field goals ending up to that point. Neither offense had done a whole lot. Things kind of picked up in the second, though. Obviously Michigan took a big lead. I think they went 19-3. But then South Carolina kind of turned it on and they scored 23 unanswered points and come back to beat Michigan. So the ending ended up being pretty entertaining. Obviously, especially if you're a South Carolina fan. But it was a much better finish than it was start.
Many people are reflecting on the 2017 season for Michigan. They're pointing their fingers at Jim Harbaugh. 5 losses for this squad. What did you make of this season? And Jim Harbaugh, should he be in the crosshairs like he has been from the Michigan supporters?
Yeah, my email inbox is flooded. I remember at halftime and beyond it all day. It's been a lot of folks have been upset with Jim Harbaugh, and I think that's it's legitimate. He's obviously the head coach here. He's the one who's recruiting these kids, developing these kids, and he ultimately has to pay the price to win these games, and that's not what he's done. I think it's important here for Michigan fans to kind of step back and look at everything here. You got to consider everything. He's coming off a pair of 2 10-win seasons. How many coaches? You got to remember when Harbaugh came here. Michigan football program wasn't in a great state of affairs. He brought that sense of university pride back. A lot of folks came screaming back to the university. He brought in some top tier recruits. They won right away. So how many other coaches can you say would have done that? But he hasn't really been able to build on that. So that's, I think, where expectations come into play here. Folks are, it's year 3. Folks want more than just a 9 or 10 win season. And I don't blame them. That's something where Michigan's been in the national title spotlight before. They've won games and been in the top, finishing the top 10, won Big Ten titles before. They haven't gotten there yet in Harbaugh. So I sense I get the frustration. It's there. I think Harbaugh probably has, another year or so before things, I think, get serious for him. But I said this to other people too. I don't think Harbaugh, and folks have brought this up today and yesterday, saying, Michigan needs to fire him. I've heard everything. I don't think, I said this to other folks too, I don't think Harbaugh is going to get fired from Michigan. I think he leaves before he gets fired. Obviously we've known he's jumped around quite a bit. He's coached in college before. He obviously had a stint with the 49ers in the NFL. He's essentially a top tier free agent. He could theoretically go wherever he wanted to right now. Even though he's struggling in Michigan, if he wanted to go to the NFL tomorrow, there would be teams that would die to have him. And I don't think that would change next year either. There's a sense of frustration. I get it. It's right. They're paying him. He's getting paid $7 million a year. Expectations need to be high. But at the same token, I think you got to give this guy. I think next year will be the point here. I think the quarterback situation will come to a head. Some of these guys, these top tier recruits who they've gotten, will have another year under their belt. Guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nico Collins, Tariq Black will be back. You'll start to see, I guess, some of the fruits of their labor from a recruiting standpoint. So I think next year will be the put up or shut up year.
Well, I think it is too. I think he has 5 guaranteed years, and I think fans misconstrue the fact that Michigan should not have had high expectations coming into 2017. But I still believe that U of M as a whole underachieved because it lost 2 games, in my mind, that it should have won. And losing to MSU at the Big House, but also the bowl game to South Carolina, a game that I believe U of M should have won and had a chance to win as well on New Year's Day. So they blew those chances, and that's why I strongly believe that Harbaugh still underachieved. And it looks bad when you feel like, and it looked like to a large degree, that the offense never improved from game 1 to the bowl game, Aaron.
Yeah, and I've brought that up to several people too. When you go back to the beginning of the season, most folks had this team finishing the regular season 9-3. Some maybe had 10-2, but 9-3 seemed to be the consensus. So they finished 8-4. They lose in a Michigan State game. I think no one had them losing. I think that was your turning point in the season. That was a game they should have lost if they did. I think it stung for many Michigan fans and the Michigan football team too. But you're right. I think he has underachieved to some degree. I've said this to folks last year. They had a ton of NFL draft picks. They ended up going, winning 10 games, I think, which is good. But I think they need to do a little bit more than they did last year. So I think last year was a little bit of a disappointment too. That's not a stretch to say. You could say he's done that. But again, he was in year 2 last year. He won 10 games. So it's like how many situations, how many other, if you would have brought in another coach to Michigan 2 years ago, would that same thing have happened? It's hard to say. I would say I'd be cautious to say it would. But again, like I mentioned earlier, he's got to take another step. It's got to happen sooner rather than later. They've got to be able to compete, for a Big Ten championship, and not if or even win one. And he's got to get in the playoff. I mean, I think Michigan fans have been starving for a national championship year for a long time, and they want to be able to root for something tangible, something that's something more than just playing for a New Year's Day bowl, something that's just more than just winning 10 games. They want a team that's going to be a top 5 or a playoff team and win a title. I mean, this it's been a while, so I get it.
And Aaron, you know what? There are more woes for this U of M football team than just the quarterback play. But speaking of that, I mean, that's the largest, most glaring void. And the fact that Harbaugh hasn't developed an effective enough passer by year 3, it is shocking and I think embarrassing to him and his reputation as his offensive and quarterback guru and mastermind, because he hasn't really shown the prowess in developing a QB outside of, I know year 1, Jake Rudock was great and out of nowhere great. So you got to give Harbaugh a ton of credit for that. But I mean, if you don't get a better quarterback for next year, maybe you should just go under center. Or me or Doc here, because I don't know who the answer is going to be outside of maybe, after seeing what Peters did, Shea Patterson, who people keep speaking about, and they love this guy. He's the sexy man on campus now. But, I mean, there's no foregone conclusion that he is going to be eligible, and then if he is eligible, well, that he's going to be a proven commodity, a guy that succeeds at a high level week in, week out under center for U of M.
You're absolutely right, and that's something I brought up with Shea Patterson time and again here in the last month or so. His numbers are great, but if you look, if you dive deep into them, and his raw talent's there. He's got a really good arm. He's able to create some things. He's able to do some things I think some of the other Michigan quarterbacks haven't been able to do. He can run if he needs to. He's athletic, so he can get out of the pocket. He can make stuff happen. But at the same token, when he played against top tier talent, the SEC talent this year and last year, he struggled. There were 2 games this season, I think, where he threw 3 interceptions each. What do you think of right away? That's John O'Corn. So he's got the talent. The numbers are great. I'm curious to see how he kind of fits into the U of M, style and offense and everything else. Because that's one of the things too. I think Jim Harbaugh's offense, I think, has complicated things, especially this season. They've got such a young team. Wilt Spade goes down in injury. John O'Corn comes in, who hasn't really played a ton since he's gotten to Michigan. And I think John O'Corn would have been better suited to play in more of a spread or some type of different system than what Jim Harbaugh had. I'm curious to see how Patterson fits in. He's got the arm, he's got the athletic ability, but if he's hamstrung by this pro style, smash mouth, power style football, and they don't use him the right way, I can see the offense being, I guess, maybe a little similar this year next year. They got some guys they're developing. So I think they'll be okay on that front. But you're right. There's no foregone conclusion Shea Patterson's going to be the answer. I think he's another option, which is great at this point. Coming into Outback Bowl, I thought, Brandon Peters, I think had earned the right to at least be considered, the star going into the next season, or at least the top guy. He really struggled on Monday. I was surprised a little bit. He turned the football over 3 times. He looked a little uncomfortable for a while. I think part of that has to do with the offensive line that was banged up. But I wrote this today and I'm live, but I don't think the thing with Brandon Peters is, he started 5 games this year, but there really wasn't that start where you can go back and look and say that was his breakout moment. That was his game that showed you, what he really could do as a top tier quarterback. He never had that, and that doesn't mean he can't. But it kind of, at the same token, it leaves the door open for something to happen. You've got Patterson coming in. Dylan McCaffrey's that name that everybody kind of forgets about at this point. But keep in mind, he was a 5-star recruit too, top tier quarterback in the country. He's gotten rave reviews this season on the scout team. He hasn't played, so we haven't really got an opportunity to see him. But you've got to think that there's a talent there too. So I'm curious to see how this plays out. I think it's going to be a long and interesting spring and fall camp. But certainly, if Patterson is deemed eligible, and again, like you mentioned, that's not official yet. The NCAA still has to rule on that. There's no guarantee that's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it's Peters. But if he is able to play, it's going to be interesting come spring.
And honestly, I look at it like this. The optics of it would be crappy for U of M if out of spring, if Shea's eligible and Brandon Peters wins the job, I think it's very telling of the fact that Shea Patterson isn't the real deal. So the optics of it would look crappy after what you saw out of Peters throwing 2 picks, 0 TDs in the Outback Bowl against a team that allowed a lot of passing yards per game as well. And that's why it was shocking to not see Peters succeed at least a little bit and throw 1 TD or 2 TDs. So I think the optics, once again, back to that would be very shoddy on U of M's part if Peters wins the job out of spring camp after Shea is declared eligible for next season. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I always find the transfer thing fascinating because especially a guy of Patterson's stature, and I've seen this at other schools. I came to CMU. I came from CMU, or I covered that team for a couple of years, and they every now and then they get a big time recruit too, either from Michigan State or Michigan. And the expectation would be that they were going to play right away. They're going to step in, and oftentimes it was a grad transfer, so they're playing for the 5th season in their 5th season, and they're able to play right away. So the expectation was that they would come in, start, and take over, and that's often the case. With Patterson, you're right. If he comes in and says he's deemed eligible to play, but he loses to Peters, I think if you're Patterson, you start questioning yourself, like, why did this guy bring me in? What was the real motivation here? And I think that may, in theory, would burn bridges with future potential transfers. We saw that with Rudock. He came in, and I think Michigan was a little bit different situation there with not really having a quarterback. So I get that. But it's going to be interesting, like I said, in spring. You got 2 guys who I thought Peters can and still could be the starter next year. I mean, he's got the talent, he's got the raw ability, but I'm curious to see what Patterson gives. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to follow here coming up.
I'll leave you with this, Aaron. How badly, how much does Harbaugh have to win at least 10 games going into next year's bowl game to save face and to keep his job extremely safe going into his 5th year as head man at U of M?
Yeah, it's hard to put a win total on because their schedule's tough next year. They've got obviously opening against Notre Dame. They got Northwestern. They got to go on the road. They got to go to Michigan State and Ohio State. But I will say this, I won't give you win total, but I think Michigan needs to get into the Big Ten title game, whatever that win total is. Maybe it's 10 wins, maybe it's 11 wins. I don't know. Maybe it's 9. If the Big Ten East decides to beat up on each other like they kind of did this year, whatever that win total is, I think he's got to get in the Big Ten championship game. He's got to show that this program is moving forward, is still, one of the best in the country, like many of the Michigan fans want to believe and the program wants to believe. He's got to compete for a championship. I don't know if that means necessarily winning it, but getting there, and if they win it, great. But at least the fact that they've actually played in the Big Ten championship game, because they have not done that since he's been here, I think that's step one in the, I guess, dare I say, the Jim Harbaugh redevelopment phase, or the getting the Michigan football team back on track phase. So I'm going to say just getting back into the Big Ten championship.
Aaron the Man McMann, thanks for providing the fresh feedback on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Good to be back.
Very interesting conversation that you had with Aaron. I mean, it's an interesting time because similar to the Lions, similar to a lot of sports teams across Metro Detroit, the Michigan Wolverine football program has polarized their fan base. You got half of the supporters who are upset. You got half of the supporters who are still hopeful. And it's very fascinating because this is one of the first years you can kind of sense that Michigan fans battle each other. Usually it was a unified front against Sparty. Now Michigan fans are kind of battling each other due to the fact that the football team is nowhere near where they should be, and they feel like they've been sold a bill of goods. And for me, sitting back here as a Sparty, it's very fun. It's a very fun time to be a Michigan State supporter regarding what's going on with that Michigan football team. But thanks to Aaron, great insight. Now we got to turn our attention to the Detroit Lions. Major shakeup this week. We'll talk about what's happened, and we'll review the 2017 season and look to the future. As always, similar to Michigan, always next year, you're listening to Two Bad Hombres on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you enjoy the other podcasts on the network, thank you for your continued support. The free and easy way to support our network, visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can follow Vito on Twitter at Vito Jerome. You can follow the network at Detroit Podcast. We appreciate your continued support. We couldn't have great guests from MLive like Aaron McMann without your support. 2017 was a great year. 2018 looks to be very promising as well. It's very fun to pop on the microphones, turn on the studio lights, and have fun recording these daily podcasts. To continue to support us, visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah. That's right.
Doc, you're loving life right now. And I know you are despite the weather not being the greatest because of MSU. And really quick, I want to give you credit because we have to get into the Lions talk and Jim Caldwell. But I want to give you credit and show you some love and respect for MSU. The season it had a bounce-back campaign to the largest degree possible. 10 wins. D'Antonio, 100 victories now in his career at MSU. Almost 109. That's the leading win total, of MSU headmen all time, and he's almost there. He's going to probably get it next season. So a lot of respect, a lot of love I got to shower you with on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres.
Two things. I'd like to be known as Radio Fill-In Superstar from now on. Among the other names you could call me, Doc, the almighty Podfather. But yes, one of the best part of my vacations was sitting at the bar at the Tap and Barrel Grill. Fun place to watch. You and I actually had some cocktails there, and we were able to watch Michigan State. And after a slow start, 3-0 Michigan-style boring, all of a sudden, Michigan State turned it on, and it was an offensive barrage. Michigan State came there to kick some ass, and watching that game from 9 p.m. to 12:15 was amazing. It was a fun experience. Had my Michigan State scarf, threw a couple back, and just to celebrate it with, actually it was nice, a full bar full of Sparties. It was awesome. It was a great time, a great Thursday, a great Holiday Bowl experience. And in terms of, all the talk, so Michigan got to go to a national bowl game on January 1st so that all the nation can watch them shit on the bed. Did you hear Chris Carter? Now he's jumped on the bandwagon. The latest person to call Jim Harbaugh overrated. It was nice for Michigan to crap the bed in front of the entire nation January 1st. And I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was fun. You got to see the dichotomy of craptastic Michigan football versus national prominent football in the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. So it was awesome. An awesome day. And where Michigan's at for the next 9 months, you guys got to sit here and stew on it and talk about hope and praise and wondering if, similar to the Lions. The Lions, their season ended, in spectacular fashion, disappointingly, in that they were not able to defeat the Cincinnati Bengals, and they played a meaningless game versus the Green Bay Packers. And right away, Bob Quinn, OG. Thank goodness he didn't wait too long. 7:45 a.m. New Year's Day, got the tweet out from the Detroit Lions that said, Jim Caldwell no longer the head coach of the Detroit Lions, a proper move because of the fact that he came out at his presser and said, look, Jim Caldwell did a great job in terms of defeating bad teams, but versus good teams, it wasn't good enough. We didn't make the postseason in 2017. We're looking to do bigger and better things. It's not about making the postseason. It's about winning in the postseason. And when I sit back and evaluate, Bob Quinn said he thinks similar to the Doc, which makes him a genius. Because when you think similar to me, you're thinking on the right path, like everybody should. And so he recognized that I can't go forward. He did it right away. I did think, though, the one thing that was a little bit disappointing, knowing that Jim Caldwell was close to his players, to not let him address his players is kind of cold-blooded. But hey, if Bob Quinn's going to be like that, I don't mind at all. He said it. This is a winning business. And if the Lions are not on the path of winning, you're not going to be the head coach. But all the pressure right now is on Bob Quinn to make this hire. I'm still confident that he's going to make the right hire, but he is, and he stated, taking a risk, letting go of a coach that won a lot of games. The winningest coach in terms of winning percentage in the Super Bowl era, you're letting walk out the door. So the next dude you bring in, if it's your boy, defensive coordinator of the New England Patriots, Matt Patricia, if that's your guy, you got to hit a home run. You got to make sure it's the right call. But all in all, I'm still on the Bob Quinn bandwagon, loving it.
It was the right call to move on from Jim Caldwell, a winning season recorded in 2 of his first 3 seasons as head man with the Lions. But the last year, and even the year before, they made the playoffs, but lost to the Seahawks in glorious fashion right on the road, in a game they really never had a shot. And this past season, they only beat teams that were bad teams. The only good team you can bring up that they beat was in Week 4 against the Minnesota Vikings, who lost Delvin Cook in that same game. So really, winning against the Vikings in Week 4, it lost some of its luster and credibility as a team that the Lions beat that was a winning team. So for me, I don't give a lot of credit to the Lions for beating the Vikings that week. So in the grand scheme of things, this past season for the Lions, they didn't beat a good team. They didn't. Did they beat a winning team? They beat the Vikings, like I said. That
was it.
When Delvin Cook, once again, their star rookie running back, was lost for the remainder of the game, then the remainder of the season. So that's a cop-out, you can say, as a Lions fan, to bring up that and say, oh, well, they beat the Vikings that week. No, it wasn't good enough. 9-7 wasn't good enough. And specifically last year, maybe not this season as much, but last year the Lions underachieved. Remember, they slid their way into the postseason last year. That was a team that should have been better than what it performed as last year, losing in the first round of the Seahawks. So, and that's on Caldwell. And then all his mistakes this year, including playing with 9 men at one point, not correcting that too many times where he didn't challenge plays when he should have, such as against the Bengals. How about when he didn't challenge the play, the catch that, well, it was a close call with Golden Tate. He didn't challenge that catch there. Could have been reversible. So he didn't challenge plays when he should have, didn't make the right calls when he should have, and he deserved to be ousted. And guess what? It isn't related to racism. How about the guy bringing that up? Joseph Hayes, not to call out somebody, but I guess we are right now. It wasn't racism. And it wasn't because look at the fact that it boils down to his mistakes this season and throughout his Lions tenure. Didn't matter if the guy was white or black, he would have been fired. And in being fired, it was the right decision by the Lions.
Now, Vito, taking a step back, I'm happy you brought this up because you're a journalist and you recognize when you add that caveat in terms of what that writer did, it got hits, it got attention, it got him to be interviewed, and people were requesting him to go on the ticket, to go on a bunch of other radio stations, podcasts. So journalistically, it's a point that can be made by somebody, in your mind, rating it as a journalist yourself. An esteemed journalist like yourself, a Free Press contributor, somebody that contributes, who writes articles for us and a bunch of other sites. What do you think about what the guy did? Was it clickbait, and should he have written that article?
I would say maybe he did not intend it to become clickbait, but it purely was in the aftermath of the article because, I mean, look at the attention he's received, like you said, podcast interview requests, radio show interview requests, as you noted already, Doc. And look at his Twitter following, how it's thoroughly or heavily increased since writing that article. And once again, didn't have enough credibility to write it. So it really comes down to it being clickbait. And then you can write the article in contrarian to it, and at least some more hits too. Exactly,
which is something that can be defended. You can spit out any opinion you want.
But you better take the criticism, right?
Exactly. And then when you present facts, it's simple. Bob Quinn asked the question that all fans have asked. It wasn't like just everybody just said, oh, let's fire Caldwell. No. He's been around for 4 seasons, and he has a track record. I mean, there's a famous YouTube video of him calling a timeout when he was with the Colts, and Peyton Manning looks over at him and give him the death stare. So he's known. He's got a reputation of being a bad in-game manager. And you ask the question, anybody who's got any brain at all, if you ask them, can the Lions win the Super Bowl with Jim Caldwell? The answer better be no. Otherwise, you don't know football because of the fact that in-game, he makes too many mistakes. And Jim Caldwell is not a head coach that does well in the fast-paced world of the NFL in terms of keeping up and in terms of getting his team to perform well against good teams. So then you got to take the next step. But we do have to give Jim Caldwell credit because he did the job that I assigned him. For years, if you go back on my Twitter page, I even recalled it and retweeted it again. I called Jim Caldwell a stopgap coach number 2 of 3 in the process. And so far, he was able to do the job. Give the man credit. It ain't easy to get 7 to 10 wins with the Lions, to get them to the postseason 50% of the time when you were working there. He did the job. He got them to the next level. And should the Lions win the Super Bowl with Matt Patricia or anybody else, the story should start with what Jim Caldwell was able to do. But it's no shame in saying that, at this point in time, we need the next leader to get us to a playoff victory. 4 years, no playoff wins. This ain't the Bengals. You don't get 15 years to win a single playoff game. So if he would have won one this year, he probably would have been extended. But with that schedule, Bob Quinn was asked the question, do you think your team with this talent could have done more? The answer is yes, I believe it too. So at this point in time, Bob Quinn's only been a GM for 2 years. This is year 3. He's got to address the running backs, got to kind of retool both lines again, rebuild the depth. Classes 1 and 2 are okay. Classes 3 and 4 better be outstanding if you're going to take that next step. But right now, when the Lions fired Jim Caldwell, I got a renewed hope, a renewed sense of like, okay, we're on the path of winning. Let's go. 9-win season was disappointing, but with a new coach being in lockstep, dude, I got good feelings about the Lions. I'm hoping that, maybe in 2018, if you realistically look at it, if I put my fandom aside, that schedule is freaking brutal. It's tough, but if the Lions can get to 10 wins and you can get into that postseason, if your coach gives you the opportunity to get 1 or 2 wins, you would have been in. But I do believe Caldwell cost them 1 or 2 games this year, and that's why they're not in the postseason. Bob Quinn, best of luck. Get the right guy here. This fan base deserves playoff football. Vito, the building has been open and has not seen a playoff game. Get the hell out of here for the Lions. You've seen a Super Bowl, but the building has been open since 2001.
I think 2002, yeah.
No playoff games. That's ridiculous.
Yep. And a few quick things. Caldwell ended up being an upgrade over Jim Schwartz. He really wasn't. Schwartz might get a job now with the Giants, which is just hilarious to me.
Would be the first time a coach that coached for the Detroit Lions went on to take another job as a head coach.
And to Joseph Hayes and what he wrote about Caldwell fans wanting Caldwell gone and that being linked to racism. Well, maybe it would have been if you could have said what you asked yourself and the fans and listeners out there. Could you envision the Lions winning a Super Bowl with Jim Caldwell? Hell no.
You're kind of looking for more of that pass back and forth kind of thing.
Right? I mean, the answer is hell no to that question. And then he never won a playoff game as a Lions head coach.
Oh, no!
Right? Now, if you could have been able to say yes to that first question specifically, and let's say he would have won a playoff game already, or would have won a playoff game this season, and then they would have ousted him, maybe there's a little truth to it being racism, a little bit of racism there. But no, because of those 2 things that I brought up, Doc.
Final point on that. Bob Quinn surveyed the landscape, and he decided upon Jim Caldwell. Didn't fire him right away. He retained him. He gave him another contract. So Jim Caldwell's not going away with his tail between his legs. He's getting some money. So don't worry about Jim Caldwell. Like he said when he left, everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about Jim Caldwell. Worry about the team. The Lions will be okay. We just got to have renewed hope that Bob Quinn can get the right guy in here and start the process of getting this back on track, baby. I got good hopes for 2018, 2019. Bob Quinn, though, if he doesn't get the right guy, his ass is going to be on the hot seat as well.
It's a huge hire. I think he will go out and get Matt Patricia. I think Patricia has a job if he wants it. I think it comes out of that. But also personnel having to improve, which is based upon the shoulders of Bob Quinn to make it happen, especially at running back. I mean, how many areas? There are multiple areas the Lions have to improve in. And guess what? That comes down to Bob Quinn making the right decisions through the draft, in free agency, and maybe through a trade or 2. So it's more than the head coach, but the head coach does matter a lot for Bob Quinn in his tenure as Lions general manager, Doc.
Enjoyed the podcast recording, Vito. Our time has come to an end. Vito, I enjoyed 2017 in podcasting with you. 2018 looks to be a great start. Thanks to Aaron McMann and his great insights, a great M-Live reporter. I'm looking forward to podcasting this year, Vito. Big things ahead for the network. It's going to be a fun time.
A great first guest, huh? For 2018 on Two Bad Hombres, and I will sign off with that. Happy New Year once again, and best wishes to you and yours in 2018. Adios.
If you like this podcast and you like the other podcasts on this network, please check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
Head spin, hit it, fly. I got 6 jobs.